Great, thank you. So my paper is entitled Home Sweet Home, The Right of Return in Post-War Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what I want to do with you today is first look at kind of the right of return as outlined in the Dayton Accords, and then talk about some of the complications and kind of the dynamics which it's creating on the ground in Bosnia, and actually kind of come back to this issue of dying communities and kind of a long-term perspective for Bosnia. So the Dayton Peace Agreement, which is also the Constitution of Bosnia, Annex 7 outlines that all Bosnian citizens have the right to return to their pre-war home of origin as a means of settlement of the conflict. And in part this is a pragmatic measure. 2.2 million Bosnians, which is about half of the population, was displaced during the war, many of them displaced violently and through various ethnic cleansing campaigns, and kind of creating a stable legal order, dealing with issues of property restitution, and then trying to kind of encourage people to come home again was a key element in creating some sort of functioning country after the war. However, return, the way it's been defined and the way it's been exercised in the Accords is focusing on a couple of, defines return and defines home in particular ways which I think are miss or kind of marginalize some of the greater importance for and the greater opportunity for return in Bosnia. So return, it focuses on individuals and families. This is the unit of measurement, and kind of masks the kind of community, the role of community in creating the feeling of home and the identity within homes. Homes are also defined as physical locations. You know, it's the physical four walls, it's your address. And when families return to that physical address, they are considered, quote unquote, returned. But that doesn't really speak to some of the issues of quality of life, nor does it really think about homes as situated within communities. It also defines return as a cyclical process. You know, you left your home and you've gone through these experiences, and now you come back home and the process is over. You've made it back. And this kind of misses the fact that individuals went through these different experiences, through displacement, through the war, and they themselves may not be the same people that they were when they left their home. Their home may not be the same. It's oftentimes destroyed. And this process doesn't really have a fixed end. Lastly, return and the success of return is evaluated through the number of returnees. And this is especially problematic because it leaves some gray space for both the diaspora, so individuals who sought permanent residence abroad after the war, and also internally displaced persons. There's about 112,000 IDPs currently in Bosnia. It also, as I kind of mentioned before, masks the role of community in creating and defining homes. And it also doesn't really get to this issue of quality of life. What is your life like once you return? Does your home community have the adequate resources to support you financially, socially, emotionally? A lot of people are dealing with trauma. And these are all kind of elements which are not really discussed in these programs facilitating and encouraging return. So in 2004, the UNHCR proudly announced that 1 million Bosnians had returned, and kind of this was success. However, Richard Black, who's a geographer, has argued that kind of return and Annex 7 in general, specifically, was designed as a way of righting the wrong of ethnic cleansing, and that if you could recreate and reconstruct the demographic, ethnic diversity that Bosnia was known for before the war, you could kind of undo ethnic cleansing, in the sense that ethnic cleansing was motivated by desires to create ethnically homogeneous spaces. And if you can re-diversify them, then you kind of are challenging the durability of ethnic cleansing. And to do this, you know, kind of it looks at defining normalcy in Bosnia, what is kind of the desired state to obtain through through examining Bosnia's past and looking at memories of the past, Bosnia as a multi-ethnic kind of country of harmony. And this really masks the fact that Bosnia is going through multiple nested transitions. It's not just a matter of recovering from the war. There's also adapting to a new kind of economic, legal, political order. And that's on the level of the society. And then on the level of individuals, individuals are also going through multiple processes or transitions which are not just physical, and their physical location is only one component of the process of regaining a sense of community after the war. So these are 3 different anthropologists have talked about how displaced Bosnians are remembering previous lives, not just a previous place of residence. And so returning to that place you may not be able to pick up what Anders Stephenson calls your past life trajectory. And Maria Eastman says, those returning to their former homes often find themselves vastly transformed, physically and socially, and have to negotiate their re-entry in quite different contexts of power and inequality. So the Bosnians themselves have been deeply impacted by the war in ways that are broader than just physical. And this research is based off of fieldwork I conducted in 2011. And I think in looking at this process of return, it's also important to look at who doesn't return. And Dina, the pseudonym, but was one of the members of the diaspora I spoke to. And she said, we never talked about it. My husband had a job, he had citizenship, we had established a life in Slovenia, why should we go back? And I think that this speaks to a couple of the different ways in which Bosnia is changing demographically right now. There's a lot of barriers preventing people from wanting to return to their pre-war home, oftentimes dealing with kind of changes in their interpersonal ruins, as one author puts it, but also kind of where their post-war life trajectory has taken them. Mirsad talked about he's an IDP, and he didn't want to return to RS because he was concerned about betraying his wounds and wanted to stay under our government. This speaks to the ways in which he has changed during the war, and that physicality is just one part of it. But really what I want to talk about in looking at Bosnia's demographic diversity is not focusing on issues of ethnicity, because I think that is pretty easy to do, and we can talk about the ethnic makeup of communities. But look at age, which I think is one of the hidden hidden components of return. Most of those who returned were elderly. People like Dina, is probably in her 40s, and she chose to raise her family in Slovenia. And she still maintains a meaningful relationship with Bosnia as a space, with Bosnians, and with other members of the diaspora, but she's not a permanent resident. Elderly who returned did not have to deal so much with finding employment and the issues of discrimination there, and could also in many times live off of their pension or off of subsistence agriculture. This is especially important in rural communities. And another individual I spoke to, Bruno, his family is the youngest family in their village, and he said, my parents were hoping that others would return, but it doesn't look like that will happen. There are only old people, and in 7 or 8 years there isn't going to be anyone, because all the old people are going to die, and that will be bad. And this is his perspective on his community. His community is going to die in the next 20 years because of the dynamics of return, because not enough young people with families have come back to the community, and those that have come back are it's kind of the end of the line. So he talks about the natural aging process, but the other thing that Bruno doesn't quite explicitly say in this quote, is issues of the brain drain. And one of the other problems that's facing a lot of Bosnian communities is how do you keep the young people that you've got? Because there are young people who have come back, but most of the youth I spoke to were anxious to leave, either to go to an urban center, usually Sarajevo, or to kind of use their connections within the diaspora to move west, move Slovenia, Austria, Germany, Sweden, US, anywhere but here. And these kind of two different kind of unstable parts of communities, so the elderly and then the youth trying to leave, are relating to what I think are demographically unsustainable communities. And I know sustainability is a big buzzword these days in academia, but I guess, and I hate to end on a kind of a downer, but I think that the complications and the struggles that Bosnia and Bosnian communities face as a result of ethnic cleansing are not over. Even though Bosnians have this right to return to their pre-war home, not many are exercising that right, and of those who do, it's unclear how permanent and how durable that return really is. So, like I think many critiques of the Dayton Accords, it's kind of a short-term fix to a long-term problem. And I guess I do have a minute, so I'll talk about this. Do I have a minute? Okay. So the kind of piece that I was hoping to get to, which I guess I will, is looking at the role of return is return about just recreating demographically diverse communities in terms of ethnicity, or is it really about creating communities? And what I saw was that people, even if people had the right to return, and let's say Bosniaks and Bosnian Croats and Bosnian Serbs did move back to the same community, it's unclear, and it's unclear whether these individuals would actually meet each other, would actually kind of deal with some of the deeper issues resulting from the war, and is this process of meeting each other, which my interviewees spoke to as being the way in which they began to both deal with their quote-unquote interpersonal ruins from the war, but also to really create a more positive peace in society. And so I think that there's kind of two problems with the return. One is just the issue of who comes back and who doesn't, and how sustainable these communities are. But then the second is, of those who do return, how does this new composition of a community result in or create a more positive peace? And I mean, I guess we'll see, which is, I don't know, I'm sorry to be kind of a little pessimistic in my analysis, but I think we'll see. So, thank you.